The Checkpoints is presented by pharmaceutical company GM Pharma.
Mr. Jozvyak, thank you for being with us and thank you for taking my questions. I read your tweet where you were talking about the meeting of the EU ambassadors and also visa liberalization being on the table. What can you tell us more about this meeting? What do you know so far?
Well, basically, it shows that the EU is starting to be more and more worried about what's going on in Georgia. They are monitoring the protests, the violence against protesters, and they are starting to sketch up some sort of idea of what they would do and what they will look at in case this foreign agent law is adopted in June. And the sources I've spoken to said that, listen, everything is on the table, right? That doesn't mean that visa liberalization will be suspended. There are other options as well. I think the visa liberalization is a sort of last resort. But the very fact that it's being considered and that the EU is talking about it and they are quite open about this shows how serious and how worried they are about the direction of Georgia's traveling.
How do you think these sanctions, including visa liberalization, will be directed towards the high officials, those who are fully responsible on adopting this law, or for everybody?
So this is the interesting aspect of this. Visa liberalization can be suspended using a qualified majority, meaning that there is no country that can veto anything, right? So it's actually, I'm not saying it's easy to do it, but it's easier than to impose individual sanctions. Why? Because when you impose sanctions, when the European Union imposes sanctions on people, specific people, you need unanimity, meaning consensus. And as you know, Georgia has a friend in the European Union, that's Hungary. They would veto this. So visa liberalization hitting everyone is actually easier to do, even though it's difficult. So that is why individual sanctions are not in the same degree being looked at this moment.
What is your approach, like looking at Tbilisi, Rustaveli Avenue, looking at protesters, looking at the government dealing with these protests? Which scenario are you weighing in? Would you bet on? Do you think we will have this law in June? Do you think the EU will need to come up with some kinds of sanctions?
I think, and this is when I speak to EU officials as well, is that they still believe that this law or that this proposed law will not become a law. They still believe that there will be a U-turn like it was last year. So there is still hope, there's still time to change this. But the worry is being increased all the time. And the EU official I speak to now are already sort of saying, like, but what do we do if some of these protesters are being killed? They're already being injured. What about if they're being killed? What do we do? So the ball is very much in Tbilisi's court right now, because this is about what Georgia does. The EU is monitoring right now. They're looking at different scenarios, and they still hope for the best, but are starting to prepare for the worst.
So can we say that there will be no sanctions before the law? The law is some kind of an I don't know, like a watershed.
Exactly. So basically, right now, nothing. Well, I'm not saying that nothing has not happened, but basically, the law is the thing. So that is the let's say the Gordian knot. That is the watershed, as you said it. Before that, I doubt that there will be big consequences. But if the law enters into force, there will be consequences. And I think the first consequence will be that Georgia will not move forward on its EU accession. That is the obvious thing, right? Because you cannot be an EU member and have a foreign agent law. That doesn't work. And you see that as well, even when it comes to visa liberalization, actually, that I can't think of a single country that has visa liberalization with the European Union that also has a foreign agent law. So these are incompatible already there. So that will be the first victim. It will be your your chances of one day joining the European Union that will suffer from this.
And my last question from your talks, not only with EU officials, but probably with businesses, business communities, business circles, does all this hurdle around this Russian law, this questions whether Georgia is changing its course officially against the West or not, driving closer to Russia, does this already hurt the investors' sentiments? Do you see those question marks arising there?
It hurts Georgia's image, let's say. I mean, business as such, they are usually, if you talk about private business, they are usually not particularly interested in politics to begin with, but they are interested in image. And image is getting worse for Georgia. For many years, it was sort of like, oh, you know, it's an up-and-coming country where you should invest in. Right now, when you see these sort of things on TV all the time, and Georgia is starting to become quite a big international news story. It's not just something for people like me who follows Georgia all the time. People are asking, people who normally don't care about this part of the world, saying, okay, what's going on here? So image is a lot of things. In a world of social media, the way you portray yourself is important. And right now, with these sort of question marks, when you see what's going on, when you see as well about, you know, when you invest in something like a company, and there are people who are sort of saying like, well, why are you investing there when there is sort of, you know, human rights abuses or whatnot? These sort of things are important when private business also decide, okay, are we going to open a factory there or not? So the picture of Georgia is not as rosy or as interesting as it was before. Let's put it that way.
Before the law, that's
before you know the proposed law. Yes,
exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jozvyak, for your time, and thank you for these answers.
Happy to be here. Thanks.
The Checkpoints is presented by pharmaceutical company GM Pharma.